Welcome back to the Bee Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast. Today, I'm really excited to introduce you to Rainer Karcher, all the way from Munich in Germany. Welcome, Rainer.
A very good morning or good afternoon. I'm very much pleased to be with you.
Yeah, me too, Raina. I'm super excited, and I feel like there's so much connection we have in terms of your story. So, without me introducing you, I'd love you just to share a bit about who you are, a bit about your backstory and how Heartprint GmbH, I think I've got that right, haven't I? Hopefully.
That's just the German version of a limited, yes. So
Yeah, so I'm keen to kind of hear a bit about, your backstory and where you are exactly today.
thank you very much for that opportunity. So I'm Rainer, I'm 47 years old, father of three, happily married, living in the rural district of Munich. So lovely Germany with the Alps and the mountains in my back. So this is where I am. I'm in IT since, in the meantime, 27 years. I've started my career in IBM. Since then, I went through different type of corporates, mostly big ones.
Mm,
So from IBM, I went to Telecom, and then I went afterwards to Bertelsmann Group. Then I did join Siemens for more than 10 years, which is
wow.
probably most known to people who are listening here. And then afterwards, about 2 years in Allianz, so big insurance company,
Mm.
which might be known as well. I decided then starting my own company called Heartprint 9 months ago, which was mainly with the idea in mind to share my passion for two worlds, which I combined about 5 years ago. I started my career in IT and informatics, and then I just made my home private passion, which is on sustainability, environmental care, and the whole thing in a combination, my job. And then with the own company, with Heartprint, now I do have the objective to support, a bit like a climate activist in a suit, companies to understand what is sustainability all about, why it is of importance, but not with a, well, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, don't eat meat, don't waste. It's more like, how can you make a combination of ecological and economical things in a very positive way? So this is a bit, in a nutshell, all about me.
Wow. So three kids, I love your precision. I love the Germans and way you're always so precise with everything you've just shared with us. But how old are your children first? I'd love to, like, I always like to get to know a little bit about the family. How old are they?
My daughter is 13. She's the eldest. Then I have a son with 11, and the youngest son is 4. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
a bit of a
Yeah.
span.
Bit of a juggle.
But we
Yeah.
have,
Yeah,
yeah,
cool.
and
Oh, sorry, you go.
no, I was going to say, and they are the main reason. I mean, you've probably already thought about that, but they are the main reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so the passion
Yeah.
for future readiness, and thinking in how can industries, how can companies support the future, is mainly driven by them. So they remind me each day of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
And is that how Heartprint came about as well? The name, the Heartprint, yeah, is that got a lot to do with your children and the future generation of leaders?
Well, funnily, that started in a 100% company surrounding at Siemens at that time. So the CIO, she's still there, Hannah, and I'm very much pleased that she gave me the opportunity in 2019 to first start with sustainability in corporate IT. And I've presented a slide deck for her, the typical pitch deck to a C-level, which you would normally think of, very short, very describing what is the whole aspect of sustainability all about. And it started with how we can reduce our own footprint. So this is a typical term in sustainability. How can we increase the handprint? So what is things we can do out of the IT world, so automation and through digitalization and stuff. And this is what I presented to her. And she said, well, we need to have something which is a bit more emotional, and we need to get in an angle where people do feel something about it, something for the heart. And this is where exactly at that moment the idea came in mind, from footprint to handprint. Well, if it is something for heart, then heartprint, why not? And I just threw that term into it, and she loved it. And this is how we placed it and positioned it. And I afterwards Googled, is that something which is known? And finally, as we're now talking, there was a company in Australia which did T-shirts. You could just order T-shirts, and they considered themselves as Heartprint. But this was the only company. In the meantime,
Oh,
I think
wow.
they don't exist any longer. But this was the only thing I could find in the internet. So there was that term Heartprint didn't even exist before. And that was in 2019. And then 5 years later, as I've started with thinking about my own company and started to think about a term and what could that company be named of, it just came up again. And it was like, well, I mean, I would love to just limit myself to people I'd love to work with who do share the same passion and who really would like to do something. So in regard of sustainability, there is a lot of greenwashing on the market. A lot of companies just do that on the purpose of displaying themselves green to their customers, to maybe their partners and companies they're working with, but without a real change and a real systemic change. And this is exactly, I mean, there is a lot of consultancies out there who can do that, but it's not me. And I would like to display already with my naming of my own company that I'd love to work with people who share the passion for really changing and really getting future ready. And that's exactly what Heartprint stands for.
Yeah, and I love that because that kind of comes to this whole system transformation and the regenerative approach. Because, you know, when you talk about this greenwashing, and I won't lie, in the previous company I was in, it was, we were all focusing on sustainability and, advertising, marketing, comms background. It was like, I need a sustainability campaign. But it was, it felt like it was very much more surface level. But what I can see from you automatically is that this is from the heart. This is all around, how do you regenerate? How do you imprint this, embed this into organizations and businesses, but working with, by the sounds of things, leaders and teams that are purpose-driven, values-aligned, actually want to make the change and make the difference so that we do have a better environment and economic, kind of economy as we continue into the future.
Yeah, correct. And I mean, there is one additional thing which I learned over time is not everybody is interested in saving the planet or reducing plastic waste or whatever things. So that term sustainability is somehow biased. And what we need to have is a different perspective, which is a bit more holistic. And I mean, those of you now watching us, afterwards you can see here that pin from
I've been noticing it. I was going to ask you what's your pin, because I'm intrigued. You've got the suit, and I'm intrigued about asking you about where the climate activist in a suit came from. But you tell us a bit about your badge.
With pleasure. So that's the, if you're listening now, this is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals badge. And this is 17 goals, which had been defined from the United Nations in 2013. And the 17 goals are focusing on various different aspects of sustainability. So there is one for good quality education. There is one on life on land, life underwater, but as well, no poverty, zero hunger, peace, partnership for the goals. So that's a total of 17 goals. And that's more or less the full holistic description of what sustainability stands for. So future readiness for all on that planet, which includes not only environmental aspects, but as well, already said, social aspects, governmental aspects, whatever comes along with. And one of the thoughts which I just learned over time is if you would like to engage with people, if you would like to motivate people to get interested into something, you have to find that sweet spot of topics which they are interested at. And one of the aspects which I learned over time, where that passion comes along with, and the Heartprint is being created, so to say, as a door opener in the company perspectives. If you talk to C-levels, most of them are very much interested in some kind of social engagement, into inclusion, accessibility topics. All of that is closer to their hearts, because that is in accordance to, if you do something and get a result immediately, completely different to what it would be in environmental care. If you take climate, for example, as one of the objectives, if you now reduce carbon emissions, if you stop burning fossils, it doesn't have an effect, or you won't see it. And if you would see something, then maybe in 20 years, 30 years, or even longer. And that's exactly what I think as a human, you need to have a result for what you give into it. And if it's in a company perspective, even more, because this is what the C-level is used to. If they spend something, either money or time, they are normally able just then to see a result, maybe in a very short period of time, maybe within a year even. And that's exactly where social engagement does play a different perspective and a different role, and can be a door opener. And what I always use as a term is, if I'm in front of the C-level, in front of the board, they don't mind what I have in my backpack. What they're looking at is what I carry in my hands. And if that is what is in my hand, some kind of a social activity, they might be even interested in then supporting what's in my backpack as well. And this is exactly switching a bit of the perspectives and the narratives, how to make sustainability successful. And this is exactly where that climate activist in a suit terminology started as well. I am very straightforward, very bold.
If I can tell it, I love it, because I'm exactly the same.
And that's, I mean, from my point of view, what we need to have is people who are just meaning what they're saying and being straightforward, in particular, in balancing the geopolitical aspects of what we have today. Let's be honest, if you look to the US currently, if you look in so many different areas within the world, the world is going crazy, and the aspects what we need to have to save democracy, for example, to protect what we have achieved over decades, is clarity and a straightforward way as well, in a positive way. So in balancing what the current situation looks like, and the same is valid for sustainability topics. If we would like to really have still an opportunity in limiting climate warming, if you still would like to have some opportunities in making a real difference, then we need to have straight and bold decisions. And this is something which on the other side requires a good understanding and a balance with economical things. Because this is from what I look at it, the biggest aspect of NGOs which are fighting for climate, they most look only into one of the aspects. And this is then what do we need to do? What is the activities and what is the go-to topics? But on the other side, we need to have still a good quality of work. We still have to have salaries. We need to have companies which are still making money. And this is the balance, that dancing on the razor's edge, which we need to focus on and which we have to find a way for.
Yeah, which comes back to this whole system piece, right? Because, you know, what you're talking about, you know, from the C-level, C-suite, you know, that they almost want that immediacy, the tangible return on investment, the results. And so, you know, sharing one aspect of it, but then having what's in the back of your backpack, if you like, that you've used to show them that that's one part. So that will give you that short-term result. But this is what it looks like in terms of a whole system, you know, the interconnectedness of everything coming together. And I feel like that is potentially, you know, when you've talked around, you know, the sustainability piece, and even, you know, that you dip into almost one part of it. And I think, you know, that's where it can be quite sometimes transactional, if you like, and, you know, people lose sight of actually, oh, this is too hard, or how does this fit into everything? But it sounds like from what you're doing is you're looking at it holistically. It's not just one part, it's a whole system transformation. You're interconnecting all parts, even back to your badge. And it's done with, you know, heart and soul. So it's people-centered at the end of the day, but it's systemic through the business.
Correct. And I mean, the most important part on that is what we need to find is a balanced way for humanity to get attached to the modern world and to the current opportunities what we have, and still seeing a connection to what is mostly basic for all of us. And this is the connection of nature. I mean, I had been in Davos at the World Economic Forum in January this year, standing up there in the Swiss mountains, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, this is so pretty and beautiful. And I so much enjoy being here and the quietness and nature and all of that. I said, well, guys, but then you should start protecting it and not fighting against it or just ignoring. I mean, what we're at the moment looking at, and now that's the IT coming out of me once again, we're looking into AI, and AI is all over the places. AI is solving all the world's issues. So this is what we get told from all the companies and the big techs. If you look at to I don't know, power supplies, then AI will solve that. And there is geothermal things, and we can just maybe suck out carbon out of the atmosphere through AI. Well, guys, I mean, all of that is something which could happen in probably 10, 15, 20 years, but we need to have solutions now. And we should not believe only in technology. We should not only look into this because it comes with a price. And in particular, AI is consuming already around 3% of the world's energy, which is being produced, and it's constantly rising. There is data centers being built like crazy at the moment. They're reducing the amount of fresh water and sweet water because they are needing that for their cooling purposes. And I mean, then in one or the other moment, there might be then decisions whether it's the data center which is being cooled, which gets the water supply, or humanity for maybe taking a shower or drinking purposes. And that's what we have to find a good balanced way. And in particular, the world's leaders need to do that. And this is, I mean, I had been allowed to and had the ability to go to the World Economic Forum, being there as an activist. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, that's maybe one of those guys, maybe throwing.
There's a bias towards that name, like the activist. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, it did raise some bias. Absolutely. But I mean, then being in a suit gave a bit of, and I mean, this is a bit of my advantage. I'm 47 years old and I'm male. And let's be honest in that remark as well. It's mostly the male people.
Too, by the way.
Thank you.
So we're the same age, so it's okay.
That's wonderful. I mean, this is exactly the age where we get the most respect, because people don't judge us anymore because you're too young and you don't have the experience. No, we have the experience. We are in the business long enough, and we have a very good visibility, then a good understanding and good experience how to treat C-levels and how to treat the worst leaders in the economical aspects. And that's exactly where they start then making a thought. And this is, I'm not getting tired and not getting lazy in just telling them and repeating my story in regard of future readiness and for businesses in the changing world. There was one term which I did use, which raised a lot of interest in that remark, which was we are in the new age of bad surprises, because this is what we are.
New age of bad surprises.
Yeah, and we don't have an understanding any longer of what's going to happen within the next 6 months or 12 months and predict everything, because there is so many things which are changing so rapidly. Science is completely overwhelmed in certain areas. If you take weather, if you take agricultural aspects, or if you go into technological aspects and AI, this is so rapid development at the moment. It's pretty hard to predict, and therefore we have to deal with bad surprises. And in that remark, resilience is the key. And how is resilience coming into companies? Well, if you start making your thoughts and if you start making that transformational systemical thinking a new normal, and not just ignoring it and, oh, well, we now have to take care on whatever things. And this is what I get pretty hard at the moment, in particular here in Germany, and now with the taxes which are being announced, I think later today. So April 2nd, I think it's meant for later today from the US, from Trump and the Trump administration, 20% taxes and everything. And the economy is going crazy over here. And that results in everybody is pushing sustainability and future readiness topics completely aside. This is completely deprioritized. As much as it had been in the last 3-4 years on the agendas everywhere, it's completely gone. And that comes with the reason that, well, now we have to take first care on taxes and on the war in the Ukraine and whatever type of things. Well, guys, but let's be honest. I mean, resilience doesn't come with ignoring things. And if you now not invest into something, then you'll regret it maybe in 5 years or 10. And that's a bit of what I'm trying to push.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about resilience. I'm really focusing on, I don't know if you've read the book, but around how to become anti-fragile. And, it's how do you create those anti-fragile systems, as an individual, as a team, and as a business. And I think that is what we're really talking about now, because everything you're talking about, resilience is all around bouncing back, right? But establishing anti-fragile systems, whole systems that are anti-fragile, is the ability to not just bounce back, but continue to bounce forward. So when you talk about this changing world in the future, and so it's almost like resilience is like, that's not even about resilience for me anymore. It's how do you build these anti-fragile systems so that we can stand up to and move forward when we have, the big I guess catastrophic moments that happen, like who's to say that a COVID doesn't happen again, and those sorts of things, so that you're not just bouncing back and waiting for the next thing to happen, but you're actually going, okay, that's happened. What did I learn from that? How can then I, like you've talked around this, I call it the non-linear process, or the non-linear way of being able to pivot, because nothing is, from A to B anymore. And so how do we create those anti-fragile systems so that we can ensure that the future is bright, is really bright. And for like your children, I don't have children, but for my nieces and my nephews, that they are the next generation of leaders, and the world is, the environment is really healthy and the economy is really healthy. And it's a bright future, not a dire, oh my God, what have we got to look forward to? Because there's so much fear mongering as well. And, and I feel like that's why a lot of the time, when these, big announcements come out, everyone just retreats and they almost just go, all right, let's just get back to what we know and let's just focus on that, versus, not focusing on what actually is the priorities, which comes back to, that heart, that soulfulness, and the ability to tap into that, because we're always going to have things happening, Anyway, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I'm really passionate about it, and I can tell you are really passionate too. And I love having these sorts of conversations, because this is what the leaders and businesses, who are, wanting to future-proof themselves and be change forward. This is what they need to be focusing on.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, in particular now, having you sitting in Australia, myself sitting in Germany, I mean, this is exactly the prettiness and the beauty of what we have in the modern world with technology. We have the ability in interconnecting globally. We can just talk with each other and just exchange information, exchange any kind of experience, and come to solutions worldwide and globally. And this is the force which, from my point of view, is required to fight against anti-democratic situations and wars and situations with racism, which is now coming up again, and populism. We do see that quite strongly here in Europe at the moment, that the right-wing parties are getting stronger and stronger, and more people are getting attracted by very simple answers to very complicated questions. And this is not the way it should be. We need to have a global get together. We need to have an understanding for each other, respect each other, and treat each other with love, and coming with the heart in mind. And this is the fundamentals and the basics. If we would keep that in our positive and optimistic type of future thinking, exactly as you described it, without any kind of apocalypse in mind, and the world is coming to an end. No, it's not. The world is going to proceed, and we will have a bright future. We have so many good things, and we have achieved so much in the last decade, in the last 100 years. We have just to fight for it. It's not given, and it won't stay by itself. We need to fight for it. We need to come together. And this is exactly what we can get if we just combine our strength, and if we just bring people together who are on the right side of the road.
And almost take them on the journey, and just continuous, like, it's that consistency, right? It's just that reminder. So you're working with, as part of your company, you're working with SMEs, is that right? Like, in terms of, is that your core focus from the businesses that you're working with?
Well, that's indeed the core focus. The hidden champions, so to say, those companies which are mostly supporting as suppliers, as distributors in the big surroundings. In all honesty, at the moment, most of my customers are on the larger side. So that's companies with 10,000 people or more. Wow. I even have a couple of projects going on with my former employer, with Siemens, which is now in particular in such economical, challenging times, let me call it this way, a very good fundament. So I'm really grateful that I do have the opportunity. But the main idea and the main aspect is that the big corporates, they're mostly much more advanced in regard of such kind of systemic thinking and strategic ideas, because they have either the staff for, the ability for, and secondly, then the financial background for. And,
I was curious. Yeah, I was curious in terms of, because you've worked in such big corporates, and you just mentioned something that I thought was really interesting, this hidden champions piece. Is it then getting the other businesses like along who have probably less, like you say, less infrastructure to be able to implement this, and so there's that ability. Is that what the hidden champions is about, or?
Yeah, a bit of that. I mean, what I've learned over time is in sustainability, if you talk on carbon emissions, most companies in the meantime do have their net zero commitments. They do have mostly about 2030, 2040, 2050 type of commitments to get decarbonized. The thing is, they mostly look into and this is now acronyms out of the sustainability world, Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. This is what they have in their own bucket, in their own responsibility. But in most of the cases, and this is what I've heard constantly over time, most of the big corporates point towards Scope 3 emissions. And Scope 3 is upstream and downstream. So this is what is related to what comes in from suppliers, either as a service or as a product, physical components, parts of the big product then at the final, and the product itself. And that Scope 3 is 90% in most of the cases of the total of the scope emissions of carbon emissions. And I mean, if you have maybe a decarbonization strategy for Scope 1 and 2, which is only referring to 10%, well, we should probably focus then on the 90%. And that is exactly where the suppliers, the hidden champions, come into place. And if you take Siemens, as I have worked for Siemens for more than 10 years, I know those numbers quite accurate. They have more than 61,000 tier 1 suppliers. So that means 61,000 companies, from small ones. I am one of them now. I'm one of the suppliers of Siemens. I mean, I do have one employee, one colleague. That makes it a 2-people company. Look at that. And up to, I don't know, maybe 1,000, 5,000 people companies. But that's all small, medium-sized companies. And what they have is they get constantly the pressure from their customers, from companies like Siemens or any other big brands, but they don't have the staff, they don't have the ability, and they don't have the financial background to do the same thing what has happened then in big corporates with whole teams which are taking care of sustainability. So what came to my mind is that combination of digital and IT, and the ability to take a lot of things with AI or with automation and digital, which reduces the efforts then for people and reduces the cost either. and combine that with the sustainability aspects which need to be fulfilled. So that combination is a bit of the enabler to then achieve more or less the same thing which has been required and help those companies in a strategic way. So what makes me different maybe to most of the other solution providers out there is I do not have any kind of software or dashboarding or any kind of a solution. I am just myself and my experience and advising and consulting and how to get there. And this is exactly where I'm trying to help people as a first step, because the majority of companies which I ran into so far are completely overwhelmed. They don't understand the terms, they don't understand the requirements. Over here in Europe, we have the European Green Deal coming out of the European Union, which is requiring reporting. This is CSRD, a Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, comes up with a lot of KPIs and numbers and measures they need to report on. And now companies completely are overwhelmed of where to start, what is my priority, what do I have to do, and how could I maybe even create economical aspects which are helping me. And this is now just as throwing it into bucket, energy efficiency, for example. If you take a huge company with big buildings or factories, energy efficiency is one of the aspects which either helps environmental aspects, because if you reduce the amount of energy consumed, this is just then lowering the carbon emissions by the production of electricity as well. We still have a grid mix in Germany like you have in Australia as well. And on the other side, if you reduce the amount of energy being consumed through efficiency, well, this reduces the cost as well. And this is exactly one of those combinations where I mostly start getting into and supporting companies and understanding that and getting that involved into their company's strategy. This is what I'm.
I was about to say, we're on the same wavelength. I'm listening to you, and then you went bang strategy, and I'm like, it always starts when you look at this, the total business strategy. When you come back to this whole system transformation, whole system piece, the thing that I always find when I'm working with companies and businesses, that what I see is a lot of disconnect between the different components, of the business. And it's kind of like, let's take it back up here. What's your purpose? What's your mission and your values? And then what is all the pieces of the puzzle? And how do we connect them all together so that sustainability isn't sitting over here, other aspects are over here. I think that's ultimately why businesses and leaders sometimes get so overwhelmed, because there's just that going back to what is our strategy and how does this all interconnect together? And that's the first thing I always start with.
And that's exactly it, the interconnection then. And I mean, this is a bit of, if I'm getting asked of what is in one sentence your role and what do you do on a day-to-day basis, I mostly come up with a translator role. So I'm translating one language into the other. I'm translating acronyms from sustainability, acronyms from digital and the IT world into something which either C-level and board and advisors and the CEOs understand in a very short period of time. I'm just used to that. So in my former role, I had to deal with a lot of C-levels and CEO being my direct boss at that time. So I had to combine the ability in translating something into maybe a 5-minute pitch, which is normally the time you get in the board. And on the other side, I had to interconnect it to the employees and to those who are then in the operational roles who need to do the work. And that is mostly missing in companies, and in particular, what I've seen so far in the SME world, that there is not the connection between those two.
I agree.
There might be something with a strategy, or there might be something with a vision, but is the people who are working on those things understanding what the purpose is all about? Mostly not. And the other way around, there might be some grassroots initiatives who would like to change something, who might have ideas, but this is in most of the cases killed by operational day-to-day work and the typical things which you have to do anyhow. And so that interconnection between those two and trying to understand what one and the other is talking about and getting all involved into that strategy and making it part of it. And this is the second aspect then as well. I've seen so many times that sustainability was put as a separate type of a strategy component,
100%.
but not involved into the whole company strategy. And this is not working. I said that, and I used the term in my former times at Siemens. At the beginning, I was treated like the painkillers for sustainability. With me, it didn't hurt that much anymore. And it was something like, that guy is taking care of it. We don't have to. Everybody was keep going and everybody just proceeded like they're used to. And that guy is taking care of sustainability. But how should that work? How should a person or a single team take care on the sustainability aspect, holistically spoken, for a company as a whole, if everybody is just going and just doing what they've done over the last decades? that won't work. We need to make sure that it's been involved into the overall company strategy and not separate it. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do as well.
Yeah, and exactly, like, I mean, obviously I'm not focusing in on what you're, focusing in, but I feel like we have something very in common in terms of the way we're operating with, businesses, in terms of like decoupling all the different silos, and how do you put it back together? So what does it look like holistically and interconnected as we continue into this future? Because that old model and that old way of how we've had a tendency to look at, the businesses and the siloed approach, it doesn't work, and it won't work, because this younger generation, they're all around purpose, they're all around the values, etc., and they want to come to work and be engaged. And, I had a conversation with someone today, and, it was around, this younger generation. A lot of them have got side hustles, and then they're disengaged in their current role. But my comment back was, well, are they, what is there a strategy that what is it that they're not connecting to, and how do you allow them to bring that entrepreneurial spirit into what they're doing day to day, so that they've got the best of both worlds? Because this is the generation that is going to drive us forward. But I feel that, there's also that element of, you touched on it earlier, around having all the lived experience and expertise, if you like. And so then it's kind of like, we're the older bunch, if you like. I still like to say that I'm young, and you're the same, but how do you connect that together as well in businesses, right? So, like, in terms of, they might have the younger generation, or the younger leaders, up and comings, might have a better view on what everything could look like holistically, versus that top-down hierarchical approach. I feel like that is part of what needs to be pulled apart as well.
Absolutely, 100% agreed. And I think it's even more important to find ways in translating. Again, I mean, this is then the second type of translating, not only acronyms and any kind of functional aspects, but it's about a connection between the old generation, which we are still used to. So that hierarchic thinking, I mean, let's be honest, most of the C-leaders, C-levels are above the 50s, and maybe between 50 and 60, even if it goes to advisories and to CEOs. And that is a generation where we, and being the same age, 47 years old, means we are used to deal with that. We are still used to that old thinking and company car and attractiveness with salaries and responsibilities of how much people and stuff. We are used to that, and we grew up with that, so to say. Exactly as you said, now Gen Z and the younger generation, they are completely different. I've just heard a term which was purpose beats the salary. And that is something which I think describes it best. Purpose beats in any way. If you go now straight from university, straight from study into a new job offering, you don't want to deal with people who are still in that old hierarchical thinking, and you don't have the same aspects which are attractive to you working for a company. It's the purpose which is attractive. And that is something which we are a bit more used to. And again, I think it requires translators. It requires people who are able to speak both languages and interconnect those two, to ensure that it's not a fight against each other, but a collaboration aspect and just working together with each other.
It comes back to that whole system, and that soulful, people-centered approach as well. Like, that's what we need more of. I've got one last question for you, because I feel like we could just keep talking and talking and talking, and because there's so much we can talk about. And change makers, and it's not an easy job what we're doing, right? In terms of, like, there's this big journey. It's like, we've got, I don't know what your view is, but I feel like there's old world, there's new world, and it's bringing the two together, because you can't just jump from old world to new world. You've got to be here in the present moment. So what do you see as, I'm not going to say challenges, what do you see as your biggest opportunities, in terms of, I guess, two questions probably that are jumping around in my head right now, is that, I guess, what do you say no to, in terms of, because I'm not for everyone, and it sounds like you're not for everyone as well.
True.
But then also, what do you see as, you've probably just talked about it all, actually, what you see as your biggest opportunity in terms of the translator, and bringing the two together. So it's probably, yeah, I guess I don't really know what I'm asking, but it's more around, how do you yourself remain anti-fragile when you're in the position you're in and you've just started your business, it's 9 months young.
True.
How do you make sure you look after yourself and keep your own cup full as well and stay the course that you're on?
Very good questions, and I mean, it does make a total sense to just summarize it at the end now with one thing which connects again to Australia, and this is so funny because as I've started with just building my passion on sustainability, it was with permaculture, and permaculture is something which started in Australia, which is a long time ago already coming up as a solution, and if you would like to summarize it, permaculture would be the answer to most of our issues of what we have today in so many different ways. And one of the aspects of permaculture is not only about education and a sharing economy and just sharing experience with others. That's what I literally do each day in my company. But it's about balancing yourself. And that balance for myself mostly comes with the interconnection to nature. So putting my hand into soil, growing my own food at home, that is something which I do, and just completely in the opposite way of what I'm regularly doing each day. I mean, I'm in the digital world 100%. I'm in front of my laptop 10, 12 hours a day. But then getting out and getting into nature, putting a hand into soil, this is something which completely is the opposite way around and connects me and calms me down. Beside my family, which helps me a lot, beside my wife, which is just standing behind me since day one and supporting me with the company. So this is exactly what helps me a lot. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's exactly as you described it a bit earlier. It's optimism. It's a so pretty world what we're living in. It's so much opportunities, and we've achieved so much. And we need to remind ourselves with all the overwhelming amount of bad news each day. If you open TV, if you open the newspapers, if you read it in the internet, it's so much bad news, and this is mostly because of clickbait, and press and media is getting much more clicks and views if it's bad news. But we need to remind ourselves that there's so many good things which we've achieved over time. There's so many great things which we have to share with our kids, with the future generations, with others, and with ourselves. And this is bringing me in an optimistic way to be future ready and work on that and just share my passion with everyone.
I love this, Rainer. Thank you so much. So how can we find out more about you? I'll share it in my notes, but where are we best to follow you, learn more about you, etc.?
That's a lovely question. And it's very easy to connect with me either on LinkedIn. So if you search my name, Rainer Karcher, or even if you Google for a climate activist in a suit, you'll find me. So connect with me on LinkedIn, would be very much pleased to. And there in LinkedIn, you can find my website as well. It's heartprint.eu. Like European Union, or you can go for heartprint.de as well, like German. And this is what I would love to just connect with, and I would love to start making maybe some kind of business, maybe together with you, Bee, and in Australia or New Zealand. So far, I just said that in the preparation of our call, I have currently a very limited amount of connections in Australia and New Zealand. I don't know why that is.
We're a small island, and I'm here to kind of open it up. So yeah, like cross world collaboration, what we can do together, future proof everything. Absolutely. Let's keep talking. I love that.
That would be wonderful. I would really love to start that business then together with you in Australia and New Zealand, and the other way around, bring you to Germany and to Europe.
Yeah,
this would be
absolutely. Yeah, I need to get back to Germany. I'm not sure about the beer fest from when I went, like I said to you, 30 years ago. But you know what? Who knows? But thank you so much. I've loved our conversation, and have a wonderful day. I was about to say evening, but day.
Thank you very much, Bea, and have a wonderful evening in your case, and very much looking forward maybe coming back and talking to you soon.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
absolutely. I love that. Thank you.